Unfortunately, I haven't got any such good news in the UK. It's the long march through the COVID nightmare that we're going to have to talk about, I'm afraid. But frankly, I think that it is time for the lockdowns to end. And it seems that the country is starting to wake up to this. There has been what I would consider to just be, more sort of grassroots support. Whenever I go to like normie spaces on the internet, I'm seeing many, many more people saying, "Oh, this is bad. We should really stop doing this." And finally, some Conservative MPs are actually starting to say the same thing. So, just to give us a recap, this is the latest COVID data. The number of cases peaked about a month ago at 62,000. Now it's down to 13,000. There were 4,000 people in hospital with COVID. Now there's 1,800. And just say this is not overwhelming the NHS. We've covered this before, but the data has shown that the NHS has not been overwhelmed. The UK is, of course, leading the way in COVID vaccinations, as we covered last week, I think it was. If we can scroll down a little bit so we can see the graph, John. There we go. We're third on the list still with...
the only major country that's actually got a high percentage.
Yes.
Like, sorry to Israel and the UAE there, but...
Yeah, but that's about 7 people that have been vaccinated. But we have just passed the 15 million vaccinations milestone, which puts us somewhere between a fifth and a quarter of the population, depending on what this year's census tells us. But yeah, so we've hit a vaccination of 15 million. These were actually, honestly, I've got to give it to them, right? No matter where you stand on the question of the rushed COVID vaccine or not, the way they've rolled it out has actually been fairly sensible. It was older people who live in care homes, care home workers, people aged 80 or more, health and social care workers, and then they start rolling it down through the age tiers from 75 to 79, 70 to 74, things like that. And that's a sensible way of doing it, because these are the vulnerable groups in society. And then any clinically extremely vulnerable people under 70. So this has generally actually been fairly competently done, which shocks me, to be honest. I didn't really expect it. Anyway, Boris has said that he wants the schools to reopen by the 8th of March, and on the 22nd of February, we're going to get a roadmap to unlocking, which would be lovely. And of course, we have to go for the next one, which is an obligatory dunk on Europe. We did this last week, but I mean, you love to see it, don't you?
What's the little rhyme there? I assume this is for Valentine's Day.
Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm glad our vaccine rollout isn't controlled by the EU, says someone on the Bruges group. But yes, as you can see, the European Union is far, far behind us, and we covered why last week. But the interesting thing is that the Conservative government's view on this is absolutely bipolar, right? They have been, I mean, I don't want to say flip-flopping, because it's not flip-flopping. That would imply there's a coherent message that changes, right? But there just isn't a coherent message, and it is rather frustrating. But so the first thing we'll talk about, I guess, is the fact that there have been measures to increase house party fines, because, of course, we can't have people having fun during a lockdown. That's haram. And so the fine for this went up from like £200 to £800, with a cap of like £6,400 if you go and have fun. Obviously. So these new rules to give police extra powers to access test and trace data to find out whether you've been going to these house parties was approved in the Parliament by 526 votes to 24. Like, that's staggering. Only 24 people like, you know what, maybe the government shouldn't be able to surveil you everywhere you go, no matter what you do. I mean, maybe it's just 24 Conservative MPs. Obviously, all of the other parties, all of them, are all like, yeah, of course.
All of the socialists are like, yeah, why not?
Exactly. All of the socialists are, yes, obviously. I mean, you think the Liberal Democrats could polish off the sort of liberal in their title and be like, hang on a second, should the government have access to track me all the time wherever I go? Is that liberal? Well, apparently it is to them. I'm sorry. I'm always going to be salty about the Liberal Democrats, because they are just everything that they shouldn't be, and it really annoys me. But anyway, so I mean, one MP is a Broxbourne MP, Charles Walker, was one of the rebels, and said what the government is doing now is bordering on the very dangerous, to be perfectly honest. It's robbing people of hope, robbing people of something to look forward to, and very, very stupid and very short-sighted. I don't hold the Prime Minister responsible, but I do hold his Secretaries of State responsible for this, and he needs to rein them in very quickly. I'm sure he knows more than we do, but the big news on this was the question of holidays. Should we be booking our summer holidays? And of course, Boris, in a one of his COVID press conferences had said, well, it's probably too soon to say, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is Matt Hancock come out going, yeah, I've booked mine to Cornwall. It's like, Matt, Matt, I mean, A, right? That's just stupid messaging, right? But B, it makes it look like it's one rule for you and one rule for the rest of us. And it's
Looks
not like yeah, looks like, yeah, right. And it's not like Matt Hancock is like a paragon of popularity anyway, so this really isn't helping his case. But Boris said that he is optimistic that people will be able to enjoy a summer holiday. Oh, thanks, Boris. I'm optimistic that one day I'll be able to go on a summer holiday too. Maybe. Who knows? Fingers crossed.
Legalize holidays to Cornwall, huh?
Maybe one day. Maybe. I mean,
that's the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know. Cornwall's nice, but
it is nice. It's not Blackpool. I mean, sorry, Blackpool. I'm not trying to dunk on you. But anyway, yeah. But the point is, like, he's like, when asked whether the UK could have a happy and free summer, he said he was optimistic as long as the vaccine program went well. So okay, but that's fine. So why, if the vaccine program is doing so well, is it not just a guarantee, right? Because as some of the Conservative MPs have been pointing out, literally 99% of all the people who are in the danger zone for COVID have actually been vaccinated with their first shot. Something like 500,000 people have also had their second shot, and I'm sure that will carry on fairly quickly as things go on because they've got the army involved and, presumably forcibly vaccinating old people. Just suck it, grandma. Just look, the government has said. But jokes aside, right? The point is, like, if all of the vulnerable people have been vaccinated and the vaccines have a 95% success rate of protecting people, then why wouldn't we be able to just open up the country tomorrow?
Who's at risk of death?
Exactly. Literally tiny percentage of people. And so it seems that we would actually, in fact, now be in a perfectly good position to act from. But anyway, I guess the question really now is, did the lockdowns even help? It turns out that most people, well, not most people, sorry, a huge proportion of people, up to 40% of the first wave of COVID patients, caught COVID in the hospital. And my wife was one of these people. When she gave birth to my son recently, she came back with COVID. It's like, great. Turns out that if you centralize people all into various small but very heavily trafficked institutions, such as supermarkets and hospitals, then if you have a disease going around in society, well, that's a really, really useful vector of transmission. In fact, it might well be even better than having it as a more dispersed network of, people who might come into contact. It may have been actually more efficient to transmit the disease than not. But it was previously thought around 1/5 of the infections have been caught in hospitals, but apparently it could have gone up to 4 in 10 patients, which would have had a substantial impact on deaths. And this is just emblematic of the problem of central planning, right? People act before they have all of the information, because the information doesn't exist until X amount of time has passed and various studies have occurred and the data has come in. And so they move, they take an action, and it turns out that actually maybe that really wasn't the best thing to do, but we didn't know. And so now the entire economy has been absolutely trashed for something that didn't actually slow down infections. And in fact, we may as well get onto the economy now. The Guardian have done a report, not that I like to recommend The Guardian, but they seem to have actually done a good job here, that shows that Britain is, of the G7 countries, we took the worst economic hit. So The Guardian chose 8 economic indicators, as well as the level of the FTSE 100, to track the impact of coronavirus on jobs and growth and the measures used to contain it. And we according to the IMF, they estimated we contracted by 10% in 2020, and it is still shrinking, of course, because we're still under lockdown. The GDP fell by 2.6% on the month of November, and economists have forecast another 5.7% monthly decline. So as the months roll on, the economy just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. More severe job losses have so far been prevented by the Treasury's furlough scheme. Unemployment has hit the highest level in 4 years at 5%, with more than 1.7 million people out of work. I mean, it could have been worse, but all we've done there is allowed Rishi Sunak to mortgage the future of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, going on a time immemorial.
What is it, 1.2, 1.3 trillion?
Something like that.
Pounds in debt now?
It's ridiculous. That's presumably never going to be paid back. But almost 1 million more expected to lose their jobs after the furlough is wound down at the end of April. So we really have to get on with this. And so the solutions have started to be floated. And I mean, the most obvious solution being, if everyone has been vaccinated, everyone in the vulnerable zone has been vaccinated, then why do we need to prevent people from working? But that's simply something we're not going to talk about. So then we have to come to other solutions like a one-off wealth tax. So, okay, this doesn't affect me at all. Right? I'm nowhere near the person, like owning £500,000 or more, or £1 million or more for a couple. Right? I've nowhere near that amount of money or assets. So I've got no problem here. It's not going to affect me. But the thing is, I just don't like the way that they're thinking. So, we'll just have a one-off wealth tax.
Hang on, it's on assets.
Well, it's on assets, presumably like income.
But not income. They include assets. That's crazy. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, just think for London for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like a couple who own a house in London. What's a house in London? Maybe $500,000?
Yeah.
Like
but
everything there's ridiculous.
they'll charge you a tax on that, so you'll have to pay money on the assets that you own.
That's crazy.
They don't care. It's not their money. They don't
Like
care.
I don't even own a house, but that's just wrong. Like if you bought and paid for that house in London,
You thought you'd invest in some assets and that would hold your wealth, and maybe you could sell them later. No, you just give us a handover. I just hate it. I just hate the principle of it, right?
because if they were taxing income, I could maybe see a reason, but
I hate that too, but okay, fine. But it's just like, oh, you were successful, Gibbs. There's government Gibbs now. But yeah, so basically for anyone earning £500,000 or £1 million for a couple, they could end up getting like a 1% wealth tax or things like this. But the thing is, and this could raise something like £280 billion apparently for this financial year, which I guess, I mean, sure. I personally would be asking for donations. I would actually unironically be soliciting donations rather than being like, right, we're just going to impose this.
I just googled the debt. Apparently, it's 2.4 trillion.
Oh Jesus! Really?
So,
okay, that's way worse than I thought. But this is the thing, that the wealth taxes don't work, and this is actually not a controversial or new opinion. And I mean, I guess it's better than it being a bank run like Cyprus did a few years back. But Hugo had written an article on Lotus.com a little while ago that we'll leave linked in the description about why, because Argentina was going to implement a wealth tax because they obviously need money too. And Hugo had done a really good article on this. And I'll just read out one quote from it because it's, again, not a controversial issue. He says, wealth taxes are notoriously difficult to enforce. Despite often inaccurate perceptions, net worth attributed to the most wealthy people simply reflects the market valuations of the company they hold stakes in or lead. This market valuation can and does change in response to people's anticipation of developments in the economy, including an incoming wealth tax. Furthermore, rapid liquidation of corporate stakes can easily cause their price to fall, invalidating previous wealth tax-based calculations. However, if the wealth tax is restricted to a limited portfolio of assets, it will cause wealthy people to divest en masse from these assets in favour of those where value is better preserved, as you might expect. The pitfalls of wealth taxation are well documented and understood even by governments. Since 1990, the number of OECD countries with such taxes on the books has decreased from 12 to 4, according to one 2018 report. So governments realise that wealth taxes are A, punitive, and B, do not have the returns that the people who impose them think they're going to, and so they're falling out of favour.
I mean, this is something Bernie Sanders has been promoting for eons now, where he's just like, well, we'll just tax all the millionaires and billionaires a one-time thing, and then they'll pay for everything.
Yeah, and why would you take economic advice from Bernie Sanders? Exactly.
Rishi, like the Conservative Party leader. Well, Chancellor.
Exactly. Yeah, Chancellor of the economy. But yeah, and so it's like, okay, well, the only options we've got are bad ones, when what we could actually do, given by their own, like, I don't want to say propaganda, but I can't think of a better word for it, is actually, surely, logically, safely open up now. Seems to be the case. Wetherspoons is calling to reopen, so doubtless their stock's going to go up, Callum. You must be thrilled.
I'm going to have to recuse myself, aren't I?
Yeah. Recuse yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself.
You've got like 5 stocks in Wetherspoons.
I invested in Wetherspoons.
Yeah.
So
what'd you get, like £30 or something?
Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be £70 by the end of this. You're doing great. But no, Tim Martin doing the Lord's work here, warning that the pub industry was on its knees and needed to reopen to save jobs. Obviously, everything is falling apart because no one's allowed to open. Martin suggested that the various lockdown measures imposed on pubs could spell disaster for public finances because this generates $764 million in pounds, even dollars. Ugh. Sorry, 764 million burgers in taxes, and this just goes to show what a huge chunk of the economy is being shut down. There's been some breaking news just before we started the podcast as well that I haven't. What?
Someone in the chat just said pubcoin.
Pubcoin, yeah, right. Where is it? Like, come on.
No, but that's Wetherspoons is pubcoin.
Yeah, but like, why can't there be a sort of British version of Bitcoin? That's like fish and chips coin. Come on. What's going on? Yeah,
Britcoin.
Britcoin. Yeah, we're missing a trick here. We're allowing the rest of the world to get ahead of us, lads. But yeah, so some breaking news on this was the discussion about a vaccine passport, which I haven't had time to look into properly because this is very, very literally just today. This morning, these things were published. But Matt Hancock had confirmed that the government was indeed working on a vaccine passport. This being for people leaving the UK, not for internal UK travel. Thank God for small mercies, I guess.
Well, I mean, he'd only published a website about it with a list of how it's going to work and the requirements.
Yeah. But we finally have official confirmation.
Yeah.
He says it will be important for people from the UK to be able to show whether or not they've been vaccinated. We want Brits to be able to travel to those countries and therefore enable Brits to be able to demonstrate their vaccine status. So a sort of vaccine certification is something we are talking to our international counterparts about. And there are people who are arguing that the right way to have safe global travel again, because it's obviously very restricted at the moment. It's like, great, I do not want a vaccine passport, and I guess I just won't be able to go to certain countries because I don't feel the need to take any of these vaccines. And the last thing on the vaccine subject that was worth talking about is Boris Johnson's rhetoric on reversing the lockdown. So on the 22nd of this month, he's going to be giving us a roadmap to ending these lockdowns. I mean, it could just be you're allowed to open your business now, lads. Could be it. Just that's it. Go back to work. It's fine. Everyone important has been vaccinated. But no. He says, I think people would rather see a plan that was cautious but irreversible, and one that proceeds sensibly in accordance to where we are with the disease. And he ruled out the issuing of vaccine passports for domestic use, such as proof of immunity to allow entry to pubs, concert halls, and sports arenas. I mean, good. I like ruling out vaccine passports for domestic use. That's a start. And I like the term irreversible, because that implies there can't be any more lockdowns. So that sounds good, but it's so far just rhetoric and no action.
Something you also said before. Do you remember the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, Carl?
Yeah, I do.
It's a long 2 weeks.
It's been a very long 2 weeks. Depressingly long. But I had to include it just because it was pertinent to the subject. But I can't say that I'm especially optimistic when it comes to this. I think that they're going to have us in cubicles, eating the bugs, drinking the soy, and working forever. And no, not working at all. Just sat on UBI, innovating and being kumas until the end of time. And I kind of hate it.